despite the circumstances. Now, we all know that COVID-19 has created a very unique situation that none of us had prepared for. I think we were all taken aback. We were all, for lack of a better word, we were all ambushed. And I think in many ways, that has forced not just IDLO, but institutions that we partner with, including the government of Kenya, including agencies like County Assemblies Forum, to really begin to look at how we implement and how we can continue to execute the mandates of the different organizations and institutions despite the pandemic. So it is in that context that we have partnered with the County Assemblies Forum to begin to start the conversation around how do we ensure that we continue to promote the values of transparency and accountability in governance, ensuring that constitutional principles are upheld in the execution of mandates by government institutions, by agencies, by independent bodies, in spite of the COVID pandemic. And it is in this regard that then, when the County Assemblies Forum reached out to say, could we partner on the possibility of engaging on how to actually do this? As the IDLO, we took this on board and we're very excited. So I think I will not go into too much of what we're going to discuss today. I think we do have the experts to do that for us. But I would just like to say that from where we see the development of this process as IDLO, this is the beginning, I think, of an ongoing conversation on strengthening, as it were, the role of county assemblies, strengthening the budget scrutiny and oversight roles of the county assemblies, despite what we are currently going through. And this obviously is not unique to Kenya. I think it is, it's happening the world over, but I think our concern and our interest obviously is Kenya because that's where we work. So I think at this point, I'll let Judy lead with the moderation and let our speakers take us on. I'll be happy to intervene as we go along. Thank you very much, Judy.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for that very, very good background, and also including a background on our partnership, which we value very much as the County Assemblies Forum. We know we have worked for a long time with IDLO, and we don't take it for granted that even at this particular time where we have a crisis, and as you say correctly, we were all confused and we didn't know which way to follow, but we're somehow trying to gather ourselves and put ourselves together to see that we do what we must do, even under this crisis. So just also a brief background so that we can actually begin. I think like many other countries, I think globally, just as Teresa has mentioned, we are all faced with this pandemic. And the County Assemblies Forum, as a coordinating body for all the 47 county assemblies in Kenya, is mandated to not only coordinate our 47 county assemblies, but also to ensure that we offer technical advisories and material resources to facilitate the continuous service delivery of our county governments. So specifically, we have been keen on ensuring that the 47 assemblies continue to legislate, even under this circumstance, and approve budgetary allocations to enable the county executives actually expend monies towards the COVID-19 healthcare, but also continuously play their legislative and representative roles effectively. So we clearly, since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been able to speak to quite a number of partners, and we've continued to observe the need for business continuity and the adherence to the roles and also the principles of devolved legislatures. The forum, therefore, has undertaken to conduct a technical analysis and also develop advisories to counties on fiscal issues. And here we have been supported fully by UNICEF, and that's where our consultant Otsola comes in. And we did this just so that we can actually reassure our county assemblies as our key agents, our key legislatures, legislative bodies, that business has to continue, that oversight does not stop even under crisis. Legislative functions and the mandate does not stop during crisis, but everything has to continue. So much as we have had challenges even before the crisis, when it comes to issues of transparency and accountability, but we think that the COVID-19 pandemic and maybe other future pandemics may pose and has posed greater challenges to our county assemblies and even the executive as implementing institutions. Now, the webinar today, convened by us in partnership with IDLO and UNICEF, really seeks to explore the various experiences faced by county assemblies in performing their oversight roles, the challenges that they have experienced, and the tools that they are using to ensure accountability and effective budget scrutiny, especially under this particular crisis and maybe other pandemics. So we prepared a very brief program and very, very few questions, which we would like to deliberate today. One, we will be tackling the public finance management measures to ensure transparency and accountability, emergency responses to COVID-19 and how county assemblies are conducting their oversight, and finally, budget priorities in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And here, I will have these topics discussed by our three panelists. If you allow me, I'll go through their profiles very, very briefly. One, we have Honorable Florence Mwangangi, who is the CAF Deputy Chairperson and Speaker, Machakos County Assembly. Honorable Mwangangi is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and has represented the advocates body, that's the Law Society of Kenya, at the Judicial Service Commission. She has been extensively trained and has a lot of experience around public finance management and is now serving the people of Machakos County as Speaker of Machakos County Assembly. She is well versed in the legislative and oversight mandates of county legislatures, among other functions. We also have CPA Paul Otsola, who is an expert fiscal advisor. Paul Otsola has specific first-hand experience in implementing the system of devolved governance in Kenya, specializing in public finance and governance. He works as a technical expert with development partners supporting devolution in Kenya, and is currently a consultant on budget and fiscal affairs supporting the County Assemblies Forum with full support from the UNICEF Kenya Country Office. He also continuously consults with the World Bank. Otsola has previously implemented devolution support interventions both to the county governments and intergovernmental relations institutions at the national government, which have all been funded by UK Aid and USAID. Paul is a certified public accountant and member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, that is ISPAC. He also holds an MBA in finance with over 19 years of experience in accounting and public finance. Finally, we have Honorable Albert Kipkoech, who is the chairperson of the Budget Committee, Kericho County Assembly. He has served as an MCA in the County Assembly of Kericho, first as a youth representative in the first term, and currently as a ward representative of Solai Ward. Honorable Kipkoech chairs the Assembly Budget and Appropriations Committee and is a county coordinator for the youth members of County Assembly. He previously chaired the Assembly Committee on ICT and e-government. So honorable members and my colleagues and our partners present, allow me to now move over to give an opportunity to Paul Otsola to just give us a brief presentation on the work he's been able to do and what he thinks county assemblies under these particular circumstances must do in order not to omit anything when it comes to implementing and executing their mandate. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam CEO and Teresa of IDLO. Pleasure to meet you. And thanks so much for the elaborate introduction about this exercise. Maybe from the IT team that is supporting this webinar. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you're
Okay.
audible.
Thank you. I think much has already been said about the background and why this intervention has been sought because of what the world is undergoing now. I'll go direct to the technical side of things, and Madam has just linked it to the fact that the county assemblies need to continue legislating, especially in the area of public finance, the area of fiscal affairs. And what are these things that must be done to continue life in the new normal? First, I always say that it's important whether the executive or assembly, anything that we do is governed by a legal framework. So whether we have looked at these legal frameworks 10 million times, we continue knowing that this is the framework that governs our work. And most importantly is Chapter 12 of the Constitution of Kenya, which sets broad provisions on public finance. It has articles running from 201, I think, to 232 or 234 there. All those articles speak about the areas of public finance, and it's always important for this sake, the legislature, to have a good crisp understanding of those articles and what they say and how they relate to their work. Of course, the Constitution being the bigger law, we have specific legislation that implement those particular articles of the Constitution. The bigger one being the Public Finance Management Act that speaks to the national government, speaks to the county governments. It says what the executive is supposed to do. It says what the county assemblies are supposed to do. We'll not go into the details of the act, but I'm just saying it's important always to know that these are the manuals, these are the procedures. This is what we must always follow. We must always be within the law. The County Governments Act, very important act in terms of knowing what the counties are supposed to do, both on the planning and expenditure frameworks. We'll look at a bit of that later. The Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act, very critical for you to understand what it says and what it requires of us. Of course, we have the Control of Budget Act and the Public Audit Act. And we have other legislation that is enacted annually by county governments to implement public finance. The Appropriation Act, Finance Acts. At the national level, we have the Division of Revenue Act, which counties must understand what that law means and how then it impacts on our daily budget and planning. We have the County Allocation of Revenue Acts. The last four acts are annually done, and it's important to understand where they come in the public expenditure management cycle. Now, for the sake of this exercise, from my technical understanding, I thought it's important for us to look at it in terms of fiscal periods. Which years are we looking at? Because when you look at the county assemblies' role in public finance, both in budgeting, planning, budgeting, and budget execution, the years always cut across. For instance, we have 2019-20, which is ending the end of this month. We have expenditure reports that are supposed to be prepared, what we call the quarterly reports as required in the Public Finance Management Act. The fourth quarter report is due, is coming at the end of this month. Fourth quarter report is as good as an annual report because then it's taking care of all the quarters of the year. But let me just give an emphasis here. This area must continue to be strengthened, because for you to have a good annual report, you must have done your in-year reporting thoroughly. So as legislature, we are not the ones who do reporting, but of course, as we do oversight, it is the requirement of the law that the executive must do these quarterly reports for you to keep track of what is happening so that you don't wait till the end of the year. In fact, to me, the emphasis should be on in-year reporting other than waiting for the report at the end of the year. So that is one year that we are going to look at. Another year that we look at is 2020-21. Of course, we have the budget estimates. Some of them are already before the assemblies. Some of them have already been scrutinized. Maybe they are waiting for the executive to read the budgets. And then, of course, we have the 2020-21 is the one that perhaps, you know, the budget preparation, of course, started in 2019, July, August. Then we didn't know COVID is there. So some of these programs and priorities that were already budgeted for were already sealed in February in the fiscal strategy paper. So maybe minimal changes can be made now, but we have 2021-22, which is the year that we are going to start in July and also start the budget process thereon. But of course, our years, the budget process is done on a 3-year rolling basis, the medium-term expenditure framework. So as the counties start doing 2021-22, they will also need to look at the 2022-23, 2023-24 MTEF projections. So to me, again, this is a very important fiscal period to look at, because then we have the effects of COVID with us already now. So then how do we go into this budget process successfully, because we have the information at hand as opposed to what was for 2020-21 estimates that are before us. Another area that the assemblies need to look out for, of course, we all know Article 226 of the Constitution and what it affirms in terms of accountability. Then to enforce that, we have Section 148 of the PFMA, which requires appointment and designation of accounting officers. And now here, an accounting officer of a county government is responsible to the county assembly. That should not go unnoticed, because it is the role of the assembly to ensure accountability as the oversight, the executive, and the accounting officers of the executive at the county level are responsible to the county assembly. So those are just important notes to take care of. So if I go back to then the reporting side of it, I've just mentioned that the quarter is ending, and it's important that as the executive prepares the financial statements for 2019-20, it's also important that they do a quarterly report. This quarterly report will be important. Why? Because there are some expenditure that were already incurred between March and now, directly to COVID-19. So how was this expenditure, the executive, I mean, the legislature should be able to identify and oversight in terms of what is the lawfulness of this expenditure towards the response and how was it responsive to COVID-19? Because there are also chances that there could be misappropriations around this area. Remember, some of these expenditure may not have been ratified prior, and we have processes of ratifying an expenditure that is outside the budget through supplementaries. So this is an area that the legislature should consider. And then findings of the fourth quarter report remain critical in establishing basis for further allocation towards COVID-19. Like now, after looking at the quarter ending June, and the expenditure that has already been incurred towards COVID-19. So then how is executive planning? Are they using this as a basis of trying to make further projections? So I would just advise that the legislature looks at that period, the fourth quarter period in detail. So for continued scrutiny towards ensuring accountability and consistency, in response to the pandemic, the county assemblies will remain vigilant in oversighting the 2021 quarterly reports. The reports will be running from October to July 2021. This goes back to what I had mentioned prior, that it's just very important for the county assembly fiscal committees to know that in-year reporting is the basis of doing much of the oversight, because you have appropriated, the executive is spending. For you to keep track of the expenditure, the law has already taken care of that. It requires the executive to do quarterly reports. So you have to demand for those quarterly reports as the law has outlined, and scrutinize them. Further to that, of course, the reports are supposed to be published and publicized so that even the citizens are able to understand what the executive is implementing on quarterly basis. This is within the law and we cannot run away from it. 2020-21 budget estimates, as already mentioned. The rule of thumb is that we have a checklist that the legislature is supposed to use in looking at the budget, the completeness of the budget document. That is from section 129 and 130 of the Public Finance Management Act. That section provides detail of what the budget and the supporting documents of that budget are supposed to have. So I always say, please don't go outside the law. The law is there. Look at section 129, section 130 of the PFMA, look at what it says, and then look at the budget that the executive has presented. Does it meet those thresholds? Other than pointing out one or two areas that maybe are not even supported within the law. So it's important to follow what the law says. County assemblies also should check for sufficiency of resource allocation to programs with specific items targeting fight against COVID-19. We know that 2020-21 estimates that are before the assembly already, as I said, already done from July last year, and they have specific programs, specific MTEV priorities. So like in health, for instance, in agriculture, one or two programs may be tweaked to channel funds towards COVID-19 response, but then without distorting the original meaning of the program. But then the assembly should be able to check how this has been approached by the executive. I'm almost finishing. 2021-22 budget process, including the MTEF projections of 22-23 and 23-24. We have all seen already from the world projections and what has already happened in terms of COVID-19, the effects are going to be far-reaching. They are not effects that are going to be dealt with in the next 1 or 2 years. In fact, as we proceed, before even the vaccination is reached, is availed, maybe reinfections may occur, maybe not. Some patterns may change. So then as we do this, we have fiscal years ahead of us starting 2021-22, and of course the MTEF projections of 22-23, 23-24. So then the assembly, the legislature should be able to identify and remain vigilant in ensuring that the budget process for that year with the MTEF projections provide frameworks that prioritize programs that address effects of COVID-19, programs aimed at rebuilding the economy. This is very important by promoting the SMEs, business environment, programs that focus on developing and servicing functional infrastructure in readiness for combating emergence of more COVID infections. So as you legislate, these three points will be important to consider. And we are aware that from July, August, there the budget process starts. I always advise again, please, we should not be waiting for April as legislature to start knowing what is in the budget. I've seen we have Mheshimiwa here, a chair of the budget committee. It's important for you to get involved in terms of oversight of the budget process as it starts. From the first day the CEC issues the budget preparation guidelines, you should be able to know, because then there are these guidelines that are going to affect the estimates that come up in April 2021. So then what are your roles? Be involved at each stage. That's why I've mentioned that it will be in the interest of the legislature to keep track of the budget cycle, to ensure clear linkages within all steps of the budget process, to ensure consistency of prioritization of programs. Then, of course, the budget committee, the planning committee, the fiscal committee, I mean, all those committees that deal with fiscal affairs in the county assembly are supported by technical staff who are encouraged to develop clear trackers. I think as a chair of the budget committee, you should be able to task the the technical staff that support that committee to develop clear trackers of the budget process so that members are involved and adequately participate in the scrutiny at each stage. Just as I conclude, there are some outstanding issues that maybe further to these discussions may arise. Of course, we said 2021 is governed by an existing planning framework, the CIDP. I don't know if there's any county that already developed 10-year sector plans. That has been a gap. But in the presence of the CIDPs, it will be important also because the County Governments Act in Section 112 already points out that the CIDPs can be revised and approved by the County Assembly. What are these areas within the sectors? Agriculture, trade, health, that can have their programs amended in the CIDP to take care of the effects of COVID-19. This was not there. But remember, again, in the same County Governments Act, it is prohibited for you to allocate funds for a certain expenditure item if it is not covered in the planning framework. It's illegal. The County Assembly should be knowing this. So then how do we go back to the planning framework, which is the CIDP, and amend it so that we include some of these issues we are raising? For further guidance, I attach this, and Regina, I think, will be able to share. We have what we call a document called Scrutiny of Budgets, Economic Policies and Related Documents, a source book for legislators and fiscal analysts. It's a very detailed book. This was done by the national government and supported by USAID, I think under the former Hardy program. It's a very important book to have. And then there's some work I did realizing devolution dividend in Kenya through cohesive public finance management, public participation. This is available on the website of the World Bank. But again, I've shared with Regina, she'll be able to share. Why is this important? The legislature, the budget committee, the planning committee, those committees that deal with fiscal affairs should be able to know how to engage with the executive, especially the county treasury and the office of the governor, so that there's cohesiveness. Because without that, again, you hit a snag. The executive is proposing some measures towards COVID. The assembly thinks the measures should be like this. But there's a way, if you read this document, how the two are supposed to relate to give effect to a common approach. Thank you very much, Judy. I've taken long, but that's what I had.
Thank you very much, Paul. I would propose that we move to the next so that we can have a plenary where we can have questions raised. So just stay put And I would like to now take this opportunity to now invite Honorable Florence Mwangangi, who is the Deputy Chairperson, County Assemblies Forum, and the Speaker, Machakos County Assembly, to take us through the second session on how county assemblies are performing their oversight function during the COVID-19 pandemic, including over the emergency response funds. I would like to say, I think she's here, that we have had quite some time discussing these particular issues, but it's good that now we have Honorable Mwangangi to take us through this particular session. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Judy, and thank you, Paul, and other co-panelist, Honorable Kipkoech. I really apologize. I came on board late for about 10 minutes. I was struggling to join the meeting. I faced a bit of challenges on internet connection, but now I am well prepared to carry on. The introduction has been done, and I'm happy to be part of this process. And I will address the second question like Judy assigned. And of course, first thank UNICEF and IDLO for sponsoring this webinar so that we can be able to share ideas during these difficult times. I have noted that Paul has ably laid down the constitutional and statutory provisions that underlie the planning and budgeting processes, not only in the county assemblies, county governments, but also in the national government. And I'll not dwell much on the legal and constitutional provisions. I'll just dwell now on the issue of county assemblies performing their oversight roles and also the role of legislation and also representation, which is very critical during the period of COVID-19, possibly other emergencies we do not know, and maybe just generally, even when we don't have emergencies. My appreciation is that during emergencies like the COVID-19, the extra pressure is put on county assemblies because of the special circumstances of the emergency. We're talking of strict public health protocols that have been put in place to stem the spread of the COVID-19, and that has come with very limited social gatherings, very limited social interactions, limited in-person meetings, and that has really affected the performance of county assemblies on their oversight role. I say this because you notice that the way the legislatures operate is through meetings. Of course, committees normally meet and then they transact business, then they present their report to the plenary, that is the assembly. The committees so far have not had very serious challenges because we had to think outside the box and we organized as speakers, that is, in conjunction with the majority and minority leaders, we organized online meetings for committee sittings. Now, after they do the online meetings, most of the time they are requesting that they have in-person meetings so that they can put their report together. And of course, every other time we have to fumigate the chambers or some committee rooms where they come and sit and then transact that business. Now, once they finalize, because of the limited space in many chambers in the county assemblies, we have been admitting a limited number of members of the assemblies so that they can come and process the reports that are coming from the committees. And it is important to note that only reports of critical issues or emergencies, particularly related to COVID-19, are being addressed during those limited online, not physical in-person plenaries in the assemblies. Now, this means that the members who are not attending feel like left out. So lately, what particularly Machakos we did when we were addressing the supplementary budget, which came just about 2 weeks ago, and we finalized only last week, the second 2019-2020 supplementary budget, we had to have some members sit outside in tents. And you can imagine when they are contributing from the tents, and then again when it comes to voting, especially when it is a matter that is controversial. So the one issue that we have noted is the restricted social, contact, human contact, that has really affected the oversight role of assemblies, county assemblies. The other one is because you need public participation on some of these matters. And as it is now, the process of 2020-2021 budgeting process is already compromised, because the way I have explained the restrictions on in-person meetings, it means that the Budget and Appropriation Committee is very limited in the manner that is able to interact to process that budget and the estimates, sorry. Then when it comes to public participation, in fact, as it is, we are already wondering if we send out asking for written memoranda, and note it's already very late, asking for written memoranda, or if we try and do a Zoom meeting like we are doing, how far shall we go in reaching the public so that they make their input? So that aspect, which is mandatory under the Constitution of public participation, again is compromised. Then again, we have a problem also with the executive. And I liked what Paul said, especially the fourth quarter of 2019-2020 financial year. Assemblies, and I believe even the Auditor General, will have a lot of work to do. The reason is that there is money that has been spent, public funds that is, allegedly on projects of fighting COVID-19, and most of the better part of that public finance was expended without any approvals, without any knowledge of county assemblies, so that you find that county assemblies are being called after the event to validate an expenditure that is already done. And this quarterly reporting that Paul also referred to, it hasn't been done, of course, because you notice the limitation on in-person meetings that has affected assemblies. So that when we finally, hopefully, we are through with the process of COVID-19, when we finally learn to live with it, the assemblies will have a lot of work to do, and as I said, the Auditor General as well. The other issue that particularly we have faced as county assemblies is physical examination of documents. I know many assemblies have tried to go, paperless, because so much is not known about the virus can also be found on papers. So that means that limited or fear of wanting to interact with a lot of paperwork because of possibility of catching the virus on paper is affecting, because you appreciate that for any assembly to effectively do its oversight role, it must peruse volumes and volumes of documents from the executive. And then the other issue which I would want to address particularly is because of the limited resources that have come because of the need to fight COVID-19. The programs that the assemblies had put in place for purposes of oversight, representation, I'm talking about ordinary business, so that you find that ordinary business of counties has had to be put on hold to give preference or priority to fighting COVID-19 because of limited resources. And then there is an issue particularly which we have noted during the processing of or consideration of our supplementary budget, the last one. I'm talking now out of our experience as a county. The executive has the habit, and this is likely to be replicated in many other counties, has the habit of relocating huge chunks of finances from one vote to another, from a department to another, without the approval of the assembly, so that implementation of the budget is highly compromised. And then you will also find that there are projects that are carried on which are not in the plan. Paul talked of the CIDP, which of course is a master plan, so that every ADP is being picked out of the CIDP for purposes of implementation. But you find that perhaps because of the challenges that we have been facing in the fourth quarter 2019-2020 financial year, when we were interacting, in particular our supplementary budget, we found that there was a lot of reallocation of funds from one department across to another. And didn't involve little amounts of money, because even if it's 1 shilling, if it is spent for a project that is not planned for, it is an illegality. We already know that. But huge amounts of money would be transferred from one department and then used in another department. So then you start asking, then what was the purpose of the planning? There are quite a lot that we can share, and I believe that it's going to be an interactive, process. I am ready to carry on with the interaction, Judy. And Paul, thank you so much for laying the basis for this discussion today. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Yes. Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. We have noted quite a lot. And just to tie this with what Paul had also discussed, I would like us to, before going to plenary, take all this and now move to Honorable Albert Kipkoech to just then highlight to us what then would be the priorities for this financial year 2020-2021. But there is also a possibility he might want to touch on the next financial year, because if we listen carefully to what Paul talked about, there's so much that county assemblies might be forced to think about now in this particular special circumstance, including thinking about economic recovery, for example. What would be the post-COVID priorities, and what is it that we must look at now as we move forward? Honorable Kipkoech, I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, moderators and my colleagues, CPA Paul Otsola and Speaker Florence. I'll address the issue of priorities during next financial year, 2020-2021. But before that, allow me to say that budget cycle is expected to provide a seamless flow from preparation, approval, execution, and maybe later on, audit. And as we all know that this pandemic, COVID-19, in Kenya, we got it in March. And after a very good flow of preparation of budget, that is from last year when we were preparing annual development plans. And then after the approval of CLSP, that is in March this year. But one good thing is that I want to inform all the members that it is important to put all the priorities the next year, in the next financial year, especially in all the sectors. For instance, if you can allow me to state all of them, I will start by the first sector, which is the health service program, that we can at least give things like trainings of health workers, health allowance, and all the necessary equipment to support the Department of Health. In the sector of water and sanitation program, we can make sure that we have provided adequate water in all the counties and all the wards if possible. At the same time, there is this Department of ICT that we can use to make awareness and print reflectors for the board, at least to make awareness to all our people, because I need to believe that most of them are not aware about this pandemic.
Did we lose him? Justin?
Yeah, it's like we lost him.
Can you assist me to find him, please? Bring him back.
We
If you can.
these are the challenges that we are facing.
Yeah.
Part of the COVID-19 effects, because many areas have the challenge of internet connectivity. So
Yeah.
you really go out and run and look for Mheshimiwa and bring him back.
Yes, Justin, please do.
I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm back.
Oh,
back.
karibu. Okay.
I'm back. Sorry. So what I was saying is that maybe I have an issue of internet here, but maybe what I was saying is that priorities for this year, I'm going to touch at least in every sector. So we have 10 sectors in our county, and allow me to touch the one that has been at least affected more, that is the health service programs. We need to budget a lot of money for the issues of trainings for the health workers, because if we will find these people, especially the victims of COVID-19, if our health workers will not be able to handle that issue, I'm very sure that they may resign. And at the same time, those equipment that is necessary to support the PPEs, the mask, and what have you, if we will not introduce, if we will not be able to give them, I'm very sure that we will not be able to solve this issue thereafter. And maybe trade, because we have markets that at least our people should be going all the time. If that place can be fumigated all the time, I want to believe that we will deal with this issue of COVID or post-COVID-19. So in the Department of Finance, we are going to appropriate enough money to make sure that they handle this issue 100%. And the Department of Agriculture, they have to make sure that we have food security programs. Department of Education, here there is polytechnics. And these polytechnics, we have to introduce making of reusable masks, because I want to believe that this COVID-19 is with us, and it's not going, and it is going nowhere. Another department is the Department of Public Service Management. And I want to believe that this department will burn midnight oil to make sure that they have recruited trained personnel to deal with these issues. The issue of COVID. And we are supposed also to make roads, so that if there is something that we need to take from the ground or from machinery, at least somebody can run to that place and bring those things. And all these things should be captured in ADP and CFSP through something which is called Gorijandam. Because we all believe that ADB was passed last year because it was submitted to Assemblies by September, and CFSP was submitted by March 28, and at that time, by February 28, sorry. And by that time, this thing, COVID-19, was not there. So that these priorities should be captured in those crucial documents. Corrigendum should be sent to the Assembly for approval, so that it captures all these things. Because we all know that there is nothing that will be appropriated without the framework of annual development plan. So maybe I'll leave at that. And thank you.
Thank you very much. I think for now we would like to just open up for a very brief plenary session. I would like to open up for questions. I'm sure we have our members here, our speakers, our development partners, honorable members from the different county assemblies. If there are comments or questions, kindly just go to the chat section and raise your hand, and I will see it here and be able to ask you to ask your question or to make your comment, please. I can see Kamau, your hand is up.
Judy, I
Yes,
also
yes.
see that there are several questions that have been posted on the Q&A. Maybe our panelists could also review those.
Yes, yes, yes. In fact, I would like to go there and ask yes, so even as Honorable Kamau goes with his comment or question, let me also look at the questions here. And I will actually post it here so that we can have it taken care of by our panelists. So I had Kamau's hand up. Is it, can you hear me, Honorable Kamau? Okay, can you take the second hand up? Honorable Sang? Honorable Sang? Your comment, please.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, please.
Yeah, I'm Ronald Sang, not honorable. I'm a fiscal analyst from Assembly. Yes, I want to thank the panelists and the presenters for this good presentation. I wish to make my contribution as follows. I know we are facing unprecedented challenges due to the COVID-19, which has really affected not only budget implementation, but even the revenue being collected to fund the same budget. For example, we are expecting huge revenue shortfall from local revenue, which in turn will affect a number of programs which have been earmarked to implement that. And we are expecting this to affect even the coming budget to a large extent than the current budget, which is ending in June. Now, someone talk about how do we, I know our budgets are, most of the counties' budgets are currently being implemented or being processed by county assemblies. And we all understand that budget process is a bit rigid. For example, approval of budget estimates are normally limited. The changes that can be made by the Assembly are very limited because of the approval that was done in CFSP. When counties were processing CFSP, COVID-19 had not impacted so much. And I know most of the counties do not consider allocating resources to combat or to address the issue. So then how do we then address from the budget estimates point of view? If you look at section 108 of the BFM Act, you realize that the section reads, the county government may, with the approval of county assembly, deviate from the financial objectives in the relevant county fiscal strategy paper, but only on a temporary basis and only if the deviation is required because of a major natural disaster or some other significant unforeseen event. This therefore gives us some leeway or gives leeway to assemblies to review where necessary what was approved in the CFSP. For example, we are expecting that for us to assist our economy, because the economies of all the counties has been hit by this COVID. How then we address by way of budget the issue? We may want to come up with some programs which should stimulate the economy. For example, we may want to engage youths in roads programs, opening up of new roads, so that they can get some income, and therefore that money can have a ripple effect in the economy. We also may want to introduce some programs for providing loans to small businesses, because we know most of our people have been impacted negatively. So how can we do it? So we can use subsection, section 108, to at least alter some of the programs that were approved in the CFSP, because no one expected or anticipated the impact of this COVID to this extent that we have witnessed. So I wanted to contribute on that aspect, that we have a leeway that we can use to address some of these issues. Number two is that indeed someone had alluded to the fact that there is challenges of county assemblies right now in oversighting what the county executive are doing. And I think the presenter stressed on the reports of the implementation, budget implementation reports, progress reports, which must be submitted to assembly on quarterly basis. So counties should not sleep, because the resources that we have given, we are allocating to health to combat COVID, needs also to be oversighted, because they can also be misused. So county assemblies can still use or work within the limits that have been advised by the Ministry of Health because of the COVID, to still ensure that that money has been utilized for the purpose that is intended for. So another thing is, where possible, Parliament and the Senate should also pass DORA and CARA in time, because they normally delay, and when they approve later on, most of the counties would have processed their budgets. And that means they need to review the Revenue Act and County Revenue Act. So I think if they approve that in time, it will be doing a lot of service to counties. So those are my contributions for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sang. Thank you very much. I think the comments have been noted, and if there is any reaction from the panelists, they will react to that. But I would like to get the next question from Irene Mayaka before we can open up for reactions from the panelists. Mheshimiwa Mayaka.
Yes, thank you, Judy. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you clearly.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this forum, because it enables us to just raise some of the pertinent concerns that we have. And mine is on the aspect of, when you look at the emergency funds that for emergency response funds for the COVID-19 situation that almost all assemblies have been able to pass. My concern then comes from the aspect of, as honorable members, and this is something that has come very much from the public in terms of what are we as MCAs doing directly to influence and impact and contribute towards prevention of this particular pandemic, given the fact that we do not have any direct funds that allow us to do that directly, and we can only do it through executive. Now, I'm aware that a couple of counties, like for example, Nyandarua, Samburu, and ours as well, Nyamira, I don't know about anyone else, have made attempts to come up with a policy that enables county assemblies to directly have a budget line that they can then go to Mwananchi directly instead of through the executive to try and just provide some of the help to Mwananchi out there, like masks and that sort of thing. And of course, the challenge to be able to have this work has been the aspect of, as an oversight if we are to have a budget line that we can directly access, then who in this sense would be the person that then oversights us on that? Yeah, because the alternative then is to have it sitting at executive. And as you know, most of the time it's really hard for us to access funds directly from executive to be able to do any of this stuff. So I'd just like to hear the opinion of CPA and the Vice Chairperson, yourself or anyone else, on what would be the best way as county assemblies to then have a regulation in place that allows us to have direct budget lines for us to reach directly to Mwananchi, given the fact that we do not have the same privilege as the members of National Assembly do have of the CDF fund and what the women reps have. What else would be the alternative, or what can we do to just improve the policies that we want to put in place to enable us to have access to this budget line? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's very clear. I would like to, I can see we have about 8 more questions, but I would like to open up to the panelists first of all to answer these 4. 3 of them I think were comments, and then Honorable Mayaka's question on, then if we have, there is a need for regulations or policy to allow county assemblies to have a budget to help them contribute towards addressing the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then in case of that, who then oversights them? Can I open up to, can we start with the poll?
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam CEO. I listened into the comments. Some of them were questions. I'll go quickly because I see we don't have much time. But I also wanted to make a comment that I've seen most of the questions on the QA section. I've copied them and put them in Word. We are going to respond and share, and I'm sure CAF will be able to share the responses with the members because we cannot do everything here. Secondly is that there's someone who, let me just go straight to Honorable Mayaka. Well, when I started this presentation, I mentioned that it's always good to stick within the law and operate within the existing legal framework. Because COVID is there, you also don't want to start a process that will take long to get approvals, and yet the cases are there. You need to be responding to your Mwananchi. To me, and I've always been liberal on this, is that the executive and the assembly should devise ways of just working together because it is the assembly then that is legislating these budget proposals. So in that regard, it is the member, as a member of a ward, you should be able to engage with the executive when they are doing perhaps public participation or calling for proposals for budgets allocations to ensure that the executive then takes care of your issues. That is just within the law the way it is now, so that it's not seen that some funds are being allocated to the assembly, you put it in the budget, it's going to the control of budget, it's not being approved, funds are not flowing, it's taking another 6 months, you're not helping your people. You should be able to help your people within the existing framework. Now, in terms of provision of, I had suggested even in this advisory that there's what we call the emergency funds already provided for in the Public Finance Management Act. This is a wake-up call that this is a fund that we should be putting money on. Every year we budget. You remember when you make provisions under the emergency fund, you may never know, even that's what the law anticipated, the magnitude of that emergency. But you're just providing some funds so that in case something happens, you're able to address it. Even if you do not address it conclusively, and these I link it to the issue of the fiscal strategy papers that you already approved. I think someone was trying to ask then if the ceilings were already set, then how do you adjust? You may not adjust. You may only do what you can do at this moment in terms of 2020-21, the budget estimates that are before the Assembly. But again, you have a window, an opportunity to bring in proper estimates. And because now you already can project effects of COVID, so you can bring in proper estimates for 2021-22 proposals. And then I also mentioned here that other than the emergency funds, and this is subject to further discussion, we have what we call public funds under Section 116 of the PFMA. Because COVID is not only affecting health, trade, or water, or those specific departments, it's cutting across. You can establish a fund, I think, under Section 116 of the PFMA. Call it the county government of Machakos COVID public fund. And of course, we know what the PFMA says about the administration of the fund. The CEC for Finance is supposed to appoint an administrator. So that this fund is cutting across all departments and addressing specific issues of COVID, including what Honorable Mayaka was trying to suggest. This could be an area. You can push for legislation of a public fund because these funds regulations have to come to the Assembly for approval. So where your issues will be addressed. So to me, once this fund is there, then the administrator's work is to ensure that they are covering the effects of COVID-19 effectively. Over and above the programs and the programs in the specific sectors like health, water, and sanitation, which may have specific programs already provided for under the CIDP. But now, what you want to do here is to create a fund specifically for COVID. For the fiscal strategy paper that was already passed in February, I said there isn't much we can do because I've not seen any guidelines coming out, even from the National Treasury, that how it can be amended. I think we can do what we can do, given those funds, but again, go further in the 2021-22 estimates. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know whether there's any other comment from either Honorable Mwangangi or Mheshimiwa Albert on the issue of Dora and Kara, or any challenges on oversight, especially on new allocations.
Judy.
Yes, Chair.
Judy.
Yes, you can proceed. We can hear you.
Okay, I'm not Chair. I was just wondering whether you're referring to me. All right.
Yes, I was wondering.
Yeah,
if you have a comment on the two.
Yes, I do. I just want to start from where the presentation by Honorable Albert Kipkoech. I noted that we really need to prioritize, particularly as county assemblies, when it comes to the financial year 2020-2021. And although we have to emphasize on the health sector to see if we can increase the budget for that particular sector, it is like the COVID-19 has really touched all sectors of life, because if you listen to the presentation, and I know you did, of that honorable member, it is about water, it's about food sector, it's about trade, it's about ICT education, it's about transport, it's almost all departments in county government. So what we must do is to prioritize on a very, very serious basis, because the resources are very limited. And this brings me to the issue of Ronald Sang, when he said that revenue collection has been affected because businesses have not been operating. It's not just local revenue, but even the equitable share that comes from the government, because you notice the many tax waivers that the government, national government has had to give. The businesses are affected, so collection of revenue by the KRA must be at its lowest. So what we must do in the circumstances is to do a lot of prioritization and to ensure implementation of whatever we plan or whatever we budget for. Because if we prioritize a particular sector and then we don't implement, we don't do what works is supposed to do, we have denied the little funds that we have another sector that may have been deserving as well. And then of course, both sectors end up losing, and that is the public that is going to suffer. I want also to comment on the issue of Honorable Mayaka. Yes, Honorable Mayaka is concerned that the MCAs may not have the funds to assist in fighting the COVID-19. Our MCAs in Machakos have been equally asking for the assembly to provide masks to them, sanitizers that they can go and distribute to the public. But now the problem we fall into in this is that the assembly under the constitution is not an implementer. It is supposed to do oversight. It is supposed to represent. It is supposed to legislate. And that is why Honorable Mayaka is wondering, if we have a fund that is directly accessible to the assemblies so that they can fight COVID-19, then who is going to oversight the county assemblies? There will be nobody. And so what we need to do is each to stick to our roles, because the minute we create a fund and then we make members implementers, we are already contravening the constitution and of course the other laws that flow from the constitution. I like the suggestion by Paul that what we need to do is the county executive and county government should work together. But that is the ideal situation, and it rarely happens, because it's like a case of the hunter and the hunted, the predator and the prey. You hardly find that cordial relationship as to working together, that you can easily accommodate each other, because there's also a lot of suspicion from one side to the other. So what we would do is, particularly the MCAs, if we are going to have, for example, donors, and if we are going to have partners who are able to provide assistance, but remember the county corona committees and the national committee on COVID-19, those are the ones who receive the donations. So the best we can do is to bring in the MCAs when those donations are available, and then they go and supply to the members and have a chat with the members. And remember, if we note what the president said following the breakout of the COVID-19 pandemic, the money for DSA, the money for per diems, the money for local, domestic travel is not normal. It's no longer available to the MCS. So now you'll also ask yourself, when you fuel your vehicle and you're going to do public participation in that limited social gathering, who is going to compensate you for the fuel that you're using? Because even if we make a requisition to the COB, she will not approve that kind of payment to the MCA. It is a situation that really we need to address, and address it in a very sober manner, and perhaps even through the emergency or legislation and the funds that we are setting up. But remember, all said and done, the implementer is the executive. And if you can allow me, Judy, very briefly to comment on some Q&A questions that I've seen, especially on public participation. Let's put our heads together on this forum. which is the best way to do it? Because we are dealing with the financial year 2020-21 budget processing, and that calls for mandatory public participation, which is the best way to do it in the circumstances of COVID-19. I'm just posing it that we discuss here. And then the other one is about complying with the deadline for 30th June of passing the financial year 2020-21 budget and the Appropriation Act. Obviously, many county assemblies will not meet that deadline. So what then is the result? What is the consequence? What is the effect of that? I know the PFMA Act, the PFMA doesn't provide for penalties when you do things out of the timeline set by the law, but we can discuss what is the best way to address those two issues that are raised on the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mwangangi. I think that was quite insightful, and also very pleased that you're able to touch on the question that was raised by Honorable Mayaka. I was actually also going to open it up, but you have addressed it very well. I was going to also open up for comments from our speakers who are also here. Although I've seen one has dropped off, Honorable Lempere. Honorable Ndichu is here with us. Maybe if there's another comment later on, we can be able to listen to him. I also wanted to just bring up a few more before I give a chance to Abonyo, Paul Abonyo. I have 5 questions for you, our panelists. One is on how to deal with pending bills in budget scrutiny. How do we deal with pending bills in budget scrutiny? Then there is question number 2. What are the strategies that one can use to scrutinize a budget presentation by the local authorities at the town hall meeting? I'm suspecting this question, talking about local authorities, is from our colleague from Uganda. Remember, we have also been joined by our sisters and brothers from the East African Local Government Association. So I guess this question is from Rose, the Secretary General. Then number 3, Mr. Otsola has mentioned about getting trackers of the budget. Please elaborate further. How can county assemblies, through the Committee of Budget, generate the said trackers? That is for you, Otsola.
Sure.
How can county assemblies, through the Committee of Budget, generate the said trackers? And then number 4, and this I think goes to Mheshimiwa Mwangangi, can county assemblies decline the approval? Can county assemblies decline the approval, especially where it finds it not appropriate, so that the assembly is not a rubber stamp? Can county assemblies decline the approvals, especially where it finds it not appropriate, so that the assembly is not a rubber stamp? And then finally, do laws need to be amended to allow for a process to revise CIDPs and sector plans now to accommodate for post-COVID-19 response planning, as making changes now out of the legal prescribed cycle? Do laws need to be amended to allow for a process to revise CIDPs and sector plans now in order to accommodate for post-COVID response planning, as making changes now out of the legal prescribed cycle? So those are the 5 questions. I don't know who to give it first. Can I give it first to on pending bills? Let me open it up for our 3 panelists to actually respond.
Any of us, or specifically?
Yes, any of you, but specifically number 3 is for Paul.
Okay.
Then number 1 and 4 is for Mheshimiwa Mwangangi, and 5, I think.
Okay.
And then number 2 is for Kipkoech.
Okay. Maybe,
Please.
Chair, for the pending bills, Well,
Okay.
as I've always said, a pending bill, when you look at it, you should be able to look at it from the perspective of its authenticity. First of all, then, where and what costs this bill to be pending has to be considered. Of course, we have specific provisions within the Public Finance Management Act, when the year ends and you have money unspent, what is supposed to be done with those funds? And we have seen cases where money is being called and spent at the end of the year, but yet counties maybe receive this money on 28th of June, and then on 30th of June, they're supposed to have closed the year. And you know the expenditure process, the IFMIs, and whatnot. So are these bills arising because of that? Number one. So which means they may be legitimate to an extent. Secondly, pending bills may arise as a result of provision or entering into an expenditure that was not appropriated, thinking that perhaps before the end of the year, some kind of appropriation will be done according to the provisions of the PFMA in doing a supplementary estimate. But that was not done. So because of that, the year ends and the bill remains unpaid. So what I'm just trying to say, Chair, is that it's good for the Assembly while scrutinizing the budget and perhaps their provisions of meeting pending bills. The Fiscal Affairs Committee then looking at that budget should be able to scrutinize and check first the validity of those bills, how they came about, and look at the authenticity before allowing them to be part of the appropriation in the coming financial year or not. Because we have seen cases where the executive has quite a number of pending bills, but perhaps it is the Assembly that approved that budget without checking the details of those pending bills. So by appropriating them, then it becomes another problem to look for funds to pay for them. So before the budget is passed, it will be important for the Assembly to check and spend some time on checking on how they were, what caused those pending bills, and then the authenticity, and then will there be funds so that they don't keep recurring. That is how I understand it. Can just use this opportunity, Chair, I don't know if you may allow just to address that issue of trackers. What I meant by saying trackers is that the technical committee that is supporting the technical team of fiscal analysts that is supporting the fiscal affairs committees like the budget committee of the county assembly, they should be able to come up with some form of standard operating procedure, some form of guideline, some form of write-up, very brief, of saying that the year is starting in July, and this is the budget. These are things that have been done, Chair, but it's just good that every time the year starts, appraise the budget committee, appraise the planning committee of that process. The year is starting. This is the budget process. This is where it will start, and this is where it will end. So when the budget process starts, then the fiscal affairs, fiscal analysts supporting the fiscal affairs committee should be able to alert them by telling them that we are now in this stage of the budget process, and this is what we expect from the county executive, and this is what we need to look out for. Because I'm sure to some extent, some of the issues that are not well addressed at the scrutiny level come towards the tail end. Perhaps you are looking at the ADP. The ADP has just been presented to the planning committee. The planning committee is looking at it for the first time, and the fiscal affairs, technical staff had not prepared that team appropriately. So there should be some form of let me just use that work tracker. There should be some form of tracker update that the technical committee, the fiscal affairs committees are appraised and they know the stages of the budget process at any given time. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mwangangi, would you like to take the third question?
Judy.
Yes, yes. Yes. Hello.
All right, Judy, I saw like Honorable Kipkoech wanted to come on board.
Yes, yes.
Yes, on the second question. Huh?
Yes, second question, sure, sure.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Maybe on this second question on strategies to scrutinize budget, I want to say that at the end of every financial year, there is a document which is sent to the Assembly on or before 30th September, which is called County Budget Review and Outlook Paper. If members can scrutinize this document in details, I want to believe that they will be able to see the performance versus the budget, actual performance versus the budget. And then another thing also is that there is quarterly reports, which has financials and non-financials. If members can study these quarterly reports, especially a very good report which has financials and non-financial, they'll be able to know how their budgets are doing. One problem is that sometimes executives are not able to send these documents to us. They send documents that are half. They can give us documents which have financials only, but they don't have non-financials. But it is good that we demand at least a full-text quarterly reports, which has everything, financial and non-financial, so that we'll be able to look at budget in total. And then there is these expenditure reports that in most cases, we are not given. All accounting officers are told that at the 10th day of every month, they're supposed to send it to the Treasury and to the Controller of Budget. But we as Assembly, we don't receive this document. Maybe we can start now requesting for this document so that we can see how they perform. Thank you. That is on strategies to scrutinize budgets.
Thank you very, very much. Then I think we can allow Mheshimiwa Mwangangi to handle question 4.
Judy, I will answer the questions that I've seen. Maybe I can say something in addition, possibly even to what has already been said. I just want to address very briefly the issue of pending bills. Most of these pending bills, from my experience, arose in the first county government, the first devolved government. And there was a gray area, particularly on procurement. Some of the matters that I've interacted with is that a lot of procurement was done through direct procurement. In other words, the procurement laws were not followed up. So later there arose issues as to the validity and of such a procurement. And then the county executive and including some parts even of the county assemblies grew cold feet on settling those bills. Of course, there are others that also came up much later. And you notice that there was little attention that was paid to pending bills until recently the CS National Treasury put his feet down, and they noted that the pending bills are hurting the economy because it is the society, the public that have given services and they're not paid for. Some of them had taken loans. And so then when he said that they are not likely to be releasing the equitable share of county governments that have not addressed the issue of pending bills in the manner that is stipulated, then now we start talking a lot about pending bills. So what we need to do, particularly when we are doing budget scrutiny, is to ensure first that we confirm the authenticity of those pending bills, and we must demand for the relevant documents from the executive so that the assembly is able to, that is the budget and appropriation committee must be able to satisfy itself as to the validity of each pending bill. Secondly, we must make provisions in the budgets for paying those valid pending bills. And finally, we must pursue implementation, the actual payments. In fact, we should set timelines within which the executive must pay those pending bills and then make a report back to the assembly once we are report back to the assembly on the payment of the pending bills as appropriated. Now,
did we lose
the issue of county assemblies, if they can decline the approval, especially where it's not appropriate, so that it's not used as a rubber stamp, that's exactly what county assemblies are supposed to do, because that is what oversight is all about. And then do we have laws that provide for review of CIDPs and sector plans in view of the COVID-19 or to address any emergency? Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think those are quite good responses, and I would like to now, I can see I have two hands. I would like to get to two of them. I have Honorable Nkaduda, who has one question, and also Paul Abonyo. Honorable Nkaduda, I would like to get you first to your question, because I can see that time is really running out.
Yeah, I just wanted to interrupt briefly, Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yeah, on the last response by Honorable Mwangangi about the revision of the CIDPs. Yeah, I mean, we'll not run away from this issue, and I think one of the participants, Tim Colby, raised if we can amend the laws. Amendment of the laws is a long process because it involves participants from both levels of government. But the CIDP in Section 112 already oversaw the need for amendment. And I would urge the counties and county assemblies to use that provision to bring in amendments that will address COVID-19. Thank you. Sorry for interruption.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for that. So I would like to get Honorable Nkaduda and Bonyo as the last questions, because we don't have a lot of time, apparently. Honorable Nkaduda. Honorable Speaker Nkaduda, please. Speaker Tana River. Your hand is up. Okay, Abonyo.
CEO.
Yes, Mheshimiwa Nkaduda.
I just wanted to register that I've just come in, although late. I was in the plenary and I've joined in late, but best proceed. I'm following up. I'm catching up with you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. That's okay.
Yeah,
although we are about to finish, but it's okay.
I know I've just come in late, but I had something else.
All right. I can see one more hand up, Abonyo, so that we can finalize with that. We are running out of time.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Abonyo. I work with the Health Policy Project. I have a question regarding the creation of public funds. Some of the counties that we work with, especially in the health department, there has been this push for retention of revenue that I don't know who specifically this question would go to, probably the county assembly or Mr. Paul. The provisions for retention of revenue, it seems like there's a preference for counties to go through the creation of the public fund way rather than the Section 109B of the PFM. on that specific need. So in terms of provision, there's a contention on how the revenue, the health revenue that are collected, the health facilities are treated by the county government. And this seems to be bringing a problem in some counties where facilities are emasculated. They cannot use their revenue to defray expenses at their level. Is there any provision like what is the county assembly's view on this? Sort of how would that what is their contemplation like in each on every in any county that this has been experienced? What are their contemplation on how this problem can be addressed? And then the second question that I wanted to ask is on the creation of the fund by the county assembly. Specifically, the push to create these funds that enable the county assembly members for implementation. But the spirit of devolution is that the county is to oversight, and we know. I think giving the example of Makueni County, where there has been a move to devolve the county further to create spending units even up to the ward level. Is there like a common understanding as a county assemblies forum that this is something that can be pursued, or this is something a consideration that we can give? And then on the tracker, I think the question of whether we have a template that the executive can use to submit expenditure reports to the county assembly that can easily be monitored or easily be filled by the county executive or the respective accounting officers. Thank you very much.
Okay. 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 Paul, would you like to go first, or we leave it to Honorable Mwangangi first? I don't know. Any?
Can share. I'll maybe just put in a few, and then Honorable Mwangangi can crown it up. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
From HP Plus, I think. Section 109, as you correctly put it, the funds raised by a county government or a county government entity, 109B, may be spent at source. But if there is a legislation, I mean, that is very clear, may in accordance with other legislation or this act or a county legislation be retained by the county government entity which receive it for the purpose of defraying expenses. So that can be done in accordance with that law. But what I've seen practically working in other counties is that for the health departments, the counties they bank the health departments, the hospitals bank collections in the county revenue fund without defraying them. But again, the executive has put in elaborate measures to ensure that the hospital's budget is fully funded at any given time, maybe on an impressed system or some kind of revolving, such that after they spend, they present their vouchers and then their vouchers are reimbursed. So they always have money. So they do not need to spend whatever they collect at source. Just like the county government itself, in terms of OSR, county governments are prohibited from, spending the entire OSR budget at source. But you see, they bring that OSR as part of the budget, which is funded through the equitable share and other sources. Then they defray the expenses through the budget. So it's still okay to have this money banked, but ensure that the budget is fully funded. The national government should ensure that the counties are fully funded, okay? So that whatever they collect is not used at source, but they have money flowing freely for them to defray expenses in terms of retention of those funds. Then creation of public funds. Remember, I had mentioned earlier in my presentation that it may be necessary. It may be necessary, and I may also react partly to Honorable Mwangangi, for counties, and I said this is subject to further discussion, and it could be a very good strategy to create a public fund called COVID-19, County Government of Machakos, COVID-19 response fund. Of course, the law in section 116, the PFMA, says how this fund is supposed to be created. The regulations are legislated by the County Assembly. Of course, not implemented by the County Assembly, as Honorable Speaker said, which is very true, to address the issues of Honorable Mayaka. But during legislation, you have to ensure as a member of County Assembly of Ward X that if I need certain issues be addressed by this fund, how will they be addressed? But the implementation is being done by the executive. So to me, this strategy of establishing a fund for COVID may be very important, over and above the other programs in all other sectors that may be, again, programmed in a way that they also respond to COVID initiatives. I think that's what I can say. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Mwangangi, you had something to add?
Thank you, Jude. Paul has ably addressed the issue of, local revenue being spent at source and the issue of regulations. I just want to add that the regulations part of it, and he has talked about the COVID-19 fund, so that we can create a way that the MCA is able to access, in quotes, some fund to fight the pandemic. We will still need to be careful when we are preparing those regulations, so that the administrator, of course, is still mainly executive, and there has to be a committee. What I noted in the past is that members of assemblies wanting to be sitting in those committees, and an example in our case was the bursary fund created under section 116. The challenge here is that if the member of the county assembly is sitting in a committee that is sitting to decide on the expenditure of this fund, they're still entering into the arena of execution. And what perhaps we may need to do is to say that the composition of the committee has to be approved. The executive will propose the composition, but then the approval will still come to the assembly. If the assembly is in a way able to influence that composition and to make sure that the composition of the committee, now I'm talking of a committee that may have to administer the COVID-19 fund, if the assembly is able to influence that, the composition of that committee, then you can say that when it has projects, when the MCA has projects, in quotes, that it wants to see done, then the committee will treat that need of the MCA as a priority. In other words, it will be able to accede to the request by the MCA for implementation. I'm just saying that as county assemblies, we need to stay as far away from execution of projects as possible, so that we remain persons who are doing oversight.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chair. Members, I would like to just, unfortunately, because of time, we might not be able to continue. I'm being flagged off by our IT officers that we might not be able to continue. But before we finish, there was a question that Honorable Mwangangi just put to the floor. And I've seen there have been attempts to respond to that question on public participation. The proposal on the best way to conduct public participation, there is one answer which says we should encourage submissions of written memoranda. There is another proposal, explore use of social media platforms for submission of views. Number 3, allow for longer period of submissions of memoranda. Then 4, invite and hold physical meetings with interest groups, but within the guidelines of Ministry of Health. That is engagement of not more than 15 participants at a time. Number 2, I think there were 2 comments made by the Secretary General from the East African Local Governments Association, IALGA, sitting in Arusha. And I think he makes a comment around the executive and the legislature are all pouring energies in one pot called community well-being and advancement. So it is important to deliberately build a spirit of teamwork and cooperation for mileage. And of course, she says, over to you, CAF. This is your cup of tea. We thank you for that comment. There was also one final comment from Garissa County Assembly. With the issue of COVID-19 regulations, what will be the best strategy to do public participation of the current budget estimates? I think we have been given responses there, so I'll not dwell on that one. And I think the final one by Meshach, I don't know from where, he talks about PFMA regulations 39, requires that the assemblies do not only amend the submitted budgets by the executive by 1% only. In the event where there are serious deviations from the approved ADP and CFSP, how can the assembly flex its muscles in ensuring that this planning framework is adhered to? Oh, it was in the form of a question, sorry. I am not so sure we are able to respond to that now, but I would like to pick some of these questions and we will be able to share them with our panelists. We will prepare responses, especially to the questions we've not been able to answer here, and then share. Because we had all participants registering, it means that we have all your emails. So once we compile all these responses, we'll be able to share them on emails. I would like to give just about 30 seconds for each of our panelists to give their parting words or the parting shots or the last words. And I'll start with the Honorable Kipkoech as we come close to the close of this particular meeting. 30 minutes or 1 minute of your last parting shot.
Thank you, moderators. With me, the only thing I will say is that congratulations, and let's keep in touch. Those are very good
much.
Discussions. Thank you.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. For me, thank you for this session. Thanks to all the participants. The issue is COVID is here. We have to live with it, what they call a new normal. Let's stick to be within the law as a legislature and ensure that we continue to serve Mwananchi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable Mwangangi.
Thank you, Judy and team, particularly Teresa from IDLO and Paul and Albert Mweshmiwa. Mine is to say that oversight by county assemblies is an all-round affair, all-time affair. When it comes to emergencies like the COVID-19 and any other emergencies that we may not know, we are called upon to up our game. And so we must walk that extra mile to ensure that accountability is ensured, particularly on the use of these little or meager public resources that we have against such huge needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And finally, from our partners who supported this, without them, this would not have happened. I would like to ask Robert from UNICEF if he has a word. Or did he drop off? Tim Colby from UNDP, are you able to say a word on behalf of Simiyu? I'm not so sure, maybe they dropped off. IDLO, my co-facilitator, Teresa.
Thank you very much, Judy, and thank you very much to the presenters for a very informative session. Unfortunately, we ran out of time because I do think that there are a number of issues that were emerging that we may not have addressed, but I'm glad to say that this is the beginning, I think, of an engagement process. So I do hope that we'll be able to pick up and follow up on some of the issues. And thank you, Paul, for a very fantastic presentation. I think just to clarify and clearly articulate the roles for the county assemblies is very, very important. For me, a key question that I think I would like us to take away from this discussion is how we can enhance, I think, the public engagement and participation of citizens with the county assemblies in this particular, in this particular situation of the pandemic, because I do think that a number of questions were around how do we get that, how do we get the public participation and how do we get the public oversight, I think, in the execution of the legislative mandate of the county assemblies. So I'm really happy that we're able to have this conversation, which I think, as Honorable Kipkoech said, is the beginning of an ongoing dialogue. And we really hope to continue to partner with the County Assemblies Forum and, of course, other partners like UNICEF in really advancing and making sure that the mandate is executed despite the circumstances. So thank you very much. And thank you to our attendees for attending. It's always good to have people engaged. You don't want to speak to yourselves. So thank you very, very much, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for staying for the whole period. We were hoping, we were thinking we would actually step out, but thank you for staying in with us. I would like to just send a very great appreciation to all the participants. We had on board our fiscal analysts from across the 47 county assemblies. We had budget officers also in this particular webinar. We had our budget committee chairpersons who were led here by Honorable Kipkoech from Kericho County Assembly. We want to thank you very much. Number two, we had our development partners. I could see UNDP, UNICEF was here, IDLO, of course, was here with us. We had our sister organization, the Regional Association, East African Local Government Association, and they have stayed all the way to the end. We want to thank you. I want to say a big thank you to Honorable Kipkoech, Paul Otsola, our consultant, and most importantly, our Deputy Chair, Honorable Mwangangi, and also Speaker, County Assembly of Machakos. Thank you for setting aside time to be with us and taking us through this very, very important webinar. We cannot thank you enough, but we hope that we can still continue and have other webinars on different topics in the near future. And thank you, IDLO and UNICEF, for really supporting this particular course. Without much ado, I would like to say thank you and see you hopefully in the coming, in the next 2 weeks for another webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you and bye-bye.